Do you have your Bibles with you? If you have them, open them up, turn them on, whatever you got to do to find 1 Samuel chapter 14. And we're going to camp out there a little bit this morning. Sometimes things come our way. We have opportunities that come our way. And we have moments that are lost. If you could capture a moment that's in your life, you don't need to say this out loud. I just want you thinking about this. If you could capture a moment in your life, what would it be? Would it be a moment in your past? Would it be a moment of regret? Would it be a moment that you said, oh man, I should have done that? A lost moment. And you know what? That's what it is. When a moment comes your way and you miss it, it is lost. You don't get it back. So if we're going to live a life of faith, if we dare to live a life of faith, we need to make choices. And by the way, not making a choice is a choice. Not making a choice is a choice. What if you knew that somewhere in front of you there lied a moment that would change your life forever? A moment that was rich with potential. A moment that was filled with endless possibilities. What if there was a moment where the choices you made determined the course and the momentum of your future? My question is, would you make that choice? Some of us have made a choice to get married. That was a monumentous occasion. We were married for 3 years before we had Stephen. He was a choice that we made. Alicia was a choice that we made. The choices we didn't make was our grandkids. But we choose to have them over our house. It has changed the direction of our lives. The question is, if you had the opportunity and you knew that there was a moment out there in front of you that could change your life and the momentum of the direction you're going, would you choose it? See, sometimes I think we sleep through our dreams. And we overlook, because we have to be practical, right? We have to be practical in our lives. We don't leave the mundane to fulfill an adventure. Because sensibility takes over at some point. I want to show you a little video about about Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison was a pitcher for the Devil Rays at one point. And Jim Morrison was drafted right out of college, went to minor league baseball, and in training camp, he injured his arm. So he never pitched a day in the major league system. He had surgery. He became a high school science teacher. Married a lady in Texas, in a little town in Texas. And he was coaching his high school baseball team. And out of a whim, the catcher asked if he would throw some pitches, and he began throwing pitches to the catcher and then eventually to his ball team. And one of the things that motivated his team was, if you can make it to the state playoffs, he would try out for a Major League Baseball club during tryouts. And one of the things you need to understand is, by this time, he had a 10-year-old boy. He's been that far removed from baseball. He was the old man. There's a Disney movie called The Rookie. And he was the old guy. And he has to make a choice to follow his dreams or to be sensible. Scary to make that moment, to choose that moment. And here's the thing, your moment affects everybody around you. It certainly is going to affect that family. So, what is an adventure? By definition, an adventure is an undertaking or an enterprise of a hazardous nature. And life, as God has intended us to live, is nothing less than an adventure. We've been called to live an adventurous life in faith. And yes, it's hazardous. Luke chapter 9, verse 24 says, "If you try to keep your life for yourself, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find true life." Jesus calls us to this life of unimaginable adventure, to seize those moments. And it begins the moment we choose to follow Him. It is no less than to pass from a mundane life into a life of existence, a life that's exciting, a life filled with possibilities. Choose. Yogi Berra says when you come to a when you come to a fork in the road, take it. When you come to a crossroads, those are called moments. How important is that moment? In the Greek word for moment, we find the term in Greek, and you don't care what it says, but it's atomos. Atomos. It's the same word we get the word atom or atomic. And it is one of the smallest particles that we measure. It represents the units of the elements. Atoms come in endless numbers and seem to be insignificant in stature. And they are easily overlooked. We overlook them every single day. But within the atomic, within that moment, there is a nuclear capacity derived from what we call fusion. When you split that tiny little thing that we can't even see, when we take that atom, when we split it, it gives us a proportional response unbelievable in mankind's history. We come to a moment in our lives that will change our life forever. It is nuclear in nature. Fusion. An adventure, a moment with God, a moment that we can choose. And I want to take you on a hillside. On one side of the hillside is the Philistine army. On the other side of the hillside is the Israeli army. Saul is president. Saul is president. He's the king. And I think there's a big distinction between the two. Saul is king. See, God said, "I am your king." But during the course of many years, the nation of Israel looked around and says, "Hey, they have a king, they have a king. Can we have a king?" And God says, "Choose for you a king." You had thought they'd have chosen God to be their king. Instead, they chose a man by the name of Saul. Head and shoulders above everybody else. Handsome guy, rugged guy, a real wimp though. In life he was a real wimp. And he eventually went crazy. But he had a son named Jonathan. And on one hill, the Israelites gathered, and on the other hill, the Philistines gathered. And it was time to go to battle. And so we're going to pick up, just before we get to chapter 14, just back up a couple of verses. So on the day of the battle, none of the people of Israel had a sword or a spear, except for Saul and Jonathan. The pass at Michmash had meanwhile been secured by a contingent of the Philistine army. Now, the reason that's so important is I wanted to bring to your attention, who has all the weapons? Two men. Saul and Jonathan. And they're going up against an army that is fully armed. Every single one of them are fully armed. Yeah, I'd yell too. If I was the Israelites, I'd be crying. In fact, it's so bad that some of the men in the Israelites' army defected to the Philistines' army. So what do? What's expected of you? You got your little pitchforks, maybe, your wooden handles, your wooden spoons. Saul and Jonathan, the only one had armies. By the way, it was the Philistines who controlled the metallurgy in the region. If a farmer wanted to plow his field, he had to get that plow from the Philistines because they didn't have the technology and the know-how to weld and to create these things. So you can see the disadvantage that supposedly the Israelite army faced. But the reality is Saul may have been their human king, but they had a more powerful king overlooking them, watching over them. Yahweh is who they worshipped. And if we keep reading, verse 1, one day, and I love this story. I don't know about you, I love this story. I share it all the time. One day Jonathan said to his armor bearer, "Come on, let's go over to where the Philistines where the Philistines have their outpost." But Jonathan did not tell his father what he was doing. Meanwhile, Saul and his 600 men, unarmed, were camped on the outskirts of Gibeah, around a pomegranate tree at Migron. Among Saul's men was Ahijah, the priest, who was wearing the ephod and the priestly vest. Ahijah was the son of Ichabod's brother, Ahitub, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord, who had served at Shiloh. No one realized Jonathan had left the Israeli camp. To reach the Philistine outpost, Jonathan had to go down between two rocky cliffs that was called Bozez and Sinai. The cliff on the north was in front of Michmash, and the one on the south was in front of Geba. "Let's go across to the outpost to those pagans," Jonathan said to his armor. And this is my favorite verse. "Perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord. He can win a battle whether he has many warriors or only a few." Now this is even better than that. Do what you think is best, the armor bearer replied. "I'm with you completely, whatever you decide." Think about this. Jonathan gets up in the middle of the night, and he's going to go fight the Philistines on the other hill. He has to go down a rocky cliff, down a valley, back up a rocky cliff again. And the armor bearer says, "Come on, let's go. Perhaps the Lord will be with us." And the better response was, "Fine, I'll go with you wherever you tell me to go." Do you see a correlation here in church work? Sometimes leaders in the church, whether they're pastors, whoever, God lays upon their hearts that they need to move. We've been stuck on this we've been stuck on the battlefield on this side of the cliff, afraid of those people over there, and God's saying go, and we're just standing there. And somebody said, "Well, let's go and fight. Perhaps the Lord will be with us." Doesn't that give you comfort? And then the armor bearer said, "Well, let's go. 2 of them. Let's keep going." "All right then," Jonathan told him. "We'll cross over and let them see us. We're not even going to surprise them. We're going to let them see us. We're going to let them know we're coming. If they say to us, 'Stay where you are, or we'll kill you,' then we'll stop and not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up here and fight,' then we'll go up. That will be the Lord's sign that He will help us defeat them." When the Philistines saw them coming, they shouted, "Look, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes." Then the men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan, "Come on up here, and we'll teach you a lesson." "Come on, climb right behind me," Jonathan said to the armor bearer, "for the Lord will help us defeat them." So they climbed up using both hands and feet, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, his armor bearer, and his armor bearer killed those who came behind them. They killed some 20 men in all, and their bodies were scattered all over a half acre. And suddenly panic broke out in the Philistine army, both in the camp and on the field, including even the outposts and raiding parties. And just then an earthquake struck, and everyone was terrified. Saul's lookout at Gibeah of Benjamin saw a strange sight. The vast army of the Philistines began to melt away in every direction. "Call the roll and find out who's missing," Saul ordered. And when they checked, they found out it was that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone. Then the Lord shouted to Ahijah, "Bring the ephod here." For at that time, Ahijah was wearing the ephod in front of the Israelites. But we've got to make a decision. Let's cast lots and let's have a vote and see what God says. Does that sound like a church? We need to do this, and somebody's already engaged in battle. Somebody's already doing the work. Isn't it like a church? Well, we got to have a business meeting. We got to vote on this, right? That's what's happening here. But while Paul was talking to the priests, confusions in the Philistine camp grew louder and louder. So Saul said to the priest, "Never mind, let's get going." Folks, sometimes we're already prayed up. We don't need to take a vote. We don't need to pray about it because we're already prayed up. We just need to get moving. The decision is there. The moment is right before us. And he says, "Let's go." And then Saul and all his men rushed out to the battle and found the Philistines killing each other. There was terrible confusion everywhere. Even the Hebrews, who had previously gone over the Philistine army, revolted and joined in with Saul and Jonathan and the rest of the Israelites. Folks, when God is moving, people come back. And it's okay if they come back. Maybe they defected for a moment. But when you see what God is doing, that's their moment. Likewise, the men of Israel who were hiding in the hill countries of Ephraim joined the chase. And when they saw the Philistines running away, so the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle continued to rage even beyond Beth-Haven. Do you see this? This is what is called a Jonathan factor moment. A Jonathan factor moment. And here's what the Jonathan factor is, okay? The Jonathan factor is this. It is the explosive result that occurs when who God is so shapes who we are that it changes the way we live. Do you see that? Put that on your refrigerator. It's the explosive result that occurs when who God is so shapes our lives that it changes the way we live. So choose the life of faith, because when we choose that moment, let me give you 3 things that'll happen. The moment lies before you. Choose that moment and enjoy it. Choose to enjoy the moments when they come. I'm going to tell you right now, listen to me, these moments do not always come at convenient times in your life. Listen to me, these don't come at convenient times in your life. Being called out to a dying person late at night at 2 in the morning because the family's left, the hospice calls, and you're at this bedside and you're there for a couple hours as he passes away. It's not convenient, but it's a moment. I remember there was, I think it was a Sunday morning, one of the counselors couldn't take some youth to camp a few years back. Who's going to be the counselor to take those kids to camp? You know, we needed another counselor. Who's available to go? Hey, I was done with youth work a long time ago. And it didn't come at a convenient time. But it's a moment that comes. So you might as well choose to enjoy it. Because the most important moments rarely come when it's convenient to you. The ironic part is that our schedules get packed with the mundane and the ordinary, and it limits what God can do. We have our to-do list. Think about your to-do list. I suspect that your to-do list has ordinary, mundane things you have to get done. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Just mundane things you have to do. Your schedule's so packed, you can't fathom the idea that God will come and have a moment for you to choose that would change the rest of your life. So enjoy the moment. 2, choose not to get stuck in a moment and move beyond it. Jonathan could very well got stuck at the bottom of the first cliff and he climbed down. That was tough. And they see us coming. We did our job. We did our moment. No. See it through. They had to climb up. Climbing down is treacherous enough. Now you got to climb back up, and now you got to go and fight. Let me ask you a question. Do you think as him and that armor bearer was fighting those 20 men, or slaying those 20 men, do you think he might have been cut up a little bit? Bruised up? You think he had to take some ibuprofen at the end of this because he was feeling so bad? Or whatever it is they took? Yeah! They were in a battle. I got a feeling they were struck a couple of times. But we can get stuck reliving adventures to miss and miss the adventure God wants us to have. I know churches, not this church, but I know churches. One of our churches that we went to was almost 100 years old. First Silver was not quite 100 years old. And they kept reliving the glory days that happened 45 years earlier. 45 years earlier. Oh, we did that 45 years ago. And unfortunately, sometimes our pastor got caught up in that. Yeah, we did that, I think, like 20 years ago. I says, so what are we doing now? What are we doing now? Choose not to get stuck in the moment, but move beyond it. Because living in nostalgia, there's no future there. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're in the future. There is no future living in nostalgia. It may define who you were, but it's not defining who you are right now. We get stuck in the past due to our emotions. Sometimes we're frozen because we've been hurt. We've been frozen in time because something has caused us great pain. You know what? Anger can cause us to have blurry vision. You know that? I was so angry once, and they talked about seeing red. I saw red. And it took my wife to calm me down. I could not really see straight, couldn't think straight. We need to move beyond the past, allowing it to fuel the momentum for the future. Learning from the past informs us to be prepared to possess those God-sized moments in our lives. Looking forward to the future positions and guides us to move into moments with confidence. Think about Jonathan and his armor bearer, the profoundness of his statement. He knew God could do great things. He'd seen it. You need to also understand, if you don't know Jonathan was best friend of soon-to-be King David. Okay? Jonathan was Saul's son, so Jonathan was the inerrant heir to the throne. But God had already anointed David. Maybe not yet, maybe at this time, but will. Because God chose David, the people chose Saul. But David and Jonathan were close buddies. And I don't know where this falls in the story of Goliath. I wanted to look and forgot, Coy. But I know that Jonathan saw great things that God could do if you just take the moment God gives you. And so you take a look at what Jonathan did. He learned from that. He began to look to the future. He looked beyond the past. Allow God to give us a brand new now. The Bible tells us that Jesus is the gatekeeper to the portals of this new life. In John 10, verses 9 and 10, he says, "Yes, I am the gate, and those who come through me will be saved. Wherever they go, they will find green pasture. The thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. My purpose is to give life in all its fullness." Choose not to get stuck in the past. Choose to enjoy the moments that come your way. And choose to see the divine potential in each moment. Choose to see the divine potential in each moment. Divine potential of a moment is unlocked by the choices we make. The capacity to choose is perhaps our greatest expression of being created in God's image. I don't like the word free will. Let me tell you why. I have yet to bring anything into existence just based on my will. Think about it. I'm free to choose. I'm free to choose. But God wills things into existence. Right? God says, "Let there be light." And what happens? He says, "Let us make man in our image." So He forms a man from the earth and He breathes life into him. Can any of us do that? No. But we can choose. We have to have the courage to choose. Choices are the key that unlocks the gate that allows us to begin this journey of faith. The most spiritual activity you will engage in today is making choices. Choices about worship. Choices about prayer. Choices about praise. Choices of connecting together as a group with God. Choices to prepare us to live a life of faith with God. Moments are the context within which we live. There's moments coming all the time. Choices chart the course and determine the destination. Let me illustrate something for you. In Genesis chapter 2 and 3, we find God created man and woman. He created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Did I offend somebody here? He created them, man and woman, male and female, and placed them in a garden of choices. Look at Genesis chapter 2. The Lord placed the man in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. But the Lord warned him, "You may eat freely the fruit of every tree in the garden, except the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If you eat its fruit, you surely would die." Do you understand what's going on here? Adam and Eve has endless choices to make, all the right choices but one. Every choice they chose was the right choice, except one. Except one. Can you imagine? What do I want to do today? Whatever you decide, as long as you don't eat from the tree of the tree of good and evil, you can do whatever you want to do. You're in the will of God. So what they choose, and how did it change the momentum for you and I? Now, pretty much, most of the choices we make are not the right choices. Well, I want God's will in my life. I don't think we really do, because we don't understand the sacrifice and the adventure it's going to create. For Jonathan and the armor bearer, when they chose to be in God's will, they went to battle. They fought a war. They had to slay 20 people. The two of them slayed 20 people. Think about that. And we don't know how many other people were on that hill, but they slayed 20 of them before chaos broke out. Don't tell me there wasn't some pain and suffering during that battle. God has called us to this adventurous life. And what do we choose to do? Well, I don't know. That fruit over there looks very pleasing to me. Right? That's what we do. All the choices but one. And they choose the wrong choice. Our choices either move us towards God and all the pleasures that come in Him, or steers us away from Him to a life of shame and fear. That's our choices. Even when we struggle with our choices, God will pursue us and invite us to join the adventures again. Remember the story? There's some men who they were afraid. They were fearful. And not only did they stay home, some of them defected to the other side. Until they saw what God could do. 4. Choose life-changing moments that have a hope and a future. A hope and a future. Life-changing moments. All of our choices, of course, have consequences. Some choices have sent your life spiraling out of control. And you're sitting there waiting for something to change, hoping it'll come to an end. But other choices have reaped you years of benefits. Some choices have altered the trajectory of your entire life. There may have been 5 or 6 choices that have defined your life. Well, I have to tell you there's been at least 2 in my life. 2 things that changed my life for the good. The first was when I asked Jesus to come into my life to forgive me of my sins and change me from the inside out. That was a monumental choice that changed my life forever. The second one was choosing the wife that God has provided me and asking Regina to marry me, and she's saying yes. That was a monumental choice for her. She's like the armor bearer. Whatever you say, you know. No, it didn't go that way, but you know what I'm trying to say there. She had to make a choice too. We were looking for each other. And all the billions of people, and we found each other. We found each other because God brought us together. 2 monumental choices changed my life, changed her life. And there are for all of us defining moments that radically alter the course and the contents of our life. Making a good choice, okay? Making a good choice doesn't matter how many wrong choices you made. Please hear me. Making a good choice does not matter about all the wrong choices you made. If you only know all the wrong choices you made, I don't want to know all the wrong choices you made. I can tell you making the right choice doesn't matter. Making the right choice doesn't matter. The next moment is waiting to give birth to a new life. Let me share you another illustration. Rahab. Rahab kind of illustrates this story. She was a prostitute, and she ran a house of ill repute in Jericho. Jericho was soon to fall in the hands of God's people. And the life of a prostitute is anything but a life. She had no husband. Well, she may not have been on best terms with her family. And Joshua sent 2 spies in to scout out the city of Jericho. And these spies were kept and protected by Rahab. In one moment, Rahab's life changed. Joshua chapter 2, verse 8. Before the spies went to sleep that night, Rahab went up on top of the roof to talk with them. I know, listen to what Rahab said. This prostitute, this lady who has made all the wrong choices in her life. All the wrong choices in her life. I know that the Lord has given you this land, she told them. We are all afraid of you. Everyone in this land is living in terror. For we have heard the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. And we know that you did. We know what you did in Sihon and Og, and 2 Amorite kings east of the Jordan River, whose people you completely destroyed. No wonder our hearts have melted in fear. No one has the courage to fight after hearing such things. For the Lord your God is the supreme God of the... Listen to what she's saying. For the Lord God is the supreme God of the heavens above and below, and the heavens above and the earth below. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will be kind to me and my family, since I have helped you. Give me some guarantee that when Jericho is conquered, you will let me live along with my father and my mother, my brothers and sisters, and all my families. She may have been out with the outs of her family, but she's still thinking about her family. She's making the right choices now. She's choosing God. And look at Joshua chapter 6, verse 25. So Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute and her relatives who were with her in the house, because she had hidden the spies Joshua had sent to Jericho. And she lives among the Israelites to this day. We find that the future saved the future of the line of Jesus. She's one of the few ladies mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus. She made all the wrong choices for her life until she made the right choice. 4 ladies are mentioned. 4 ladies, only 4 ladies are mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus. Rahab is one of them, because she made the right choice. She'd been making wrong choices and wrong choices and wrong choices. Listen to this. She found a new family with the children of God. Rahab married an Israelite by the name of Solomon. Her son's name was Boaz, the husband of Ruth. Their son's name was Obed, whose son was Jesse. Jesse's son was David, the king of Israel. Rahab's bloodline flowed through the veins of the man named Joseph and the lady named Mary. And they gave birth to us. Mary gave birth to a son, and they named him Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. You see how one right choice changed the future for all of us. Dare to live an adventure of faith. At our worst, good is only one decision away. At our worst, good is only one decision away. What's your decision this morning? Can you choose your moment today? Your moment of truth is today. What will you choose? Will you choose the ordinary? Will you choose the mundane? Or will you dare to live an adventurous life of faith? What are you going to choose? I'm with Yogi Berra. When you come to a fork in the road, take it. What about you? Make that decision this morning. Would you pray with me? Father, of all the adventurous things we can do, bungee jumping, parasailing, hang gliding, the most adventurous thing we could do is make the right choice this morning to live for you. For that individual who is here, Father, who doesn't know you, I pray that moment stands before them now. An atomic moment, one that will blast their life into a new existence. And some of us, Father, had made that choice many years back, and that nuclear explosion took place in our hearts and changed us forever. And we've lost that sense of adventureness, that sense of adventure, that sense of risk. And we got locked into making the easy choice, the simple choices, the mundane choices of life. And some of those mundane choices aren't necessarily bad. Maybe on our to-do list was to come to church today. That's not a bad thing. But Father, there's a moment lying before us like Jonathan and his armor bearer that's out there. That's going to change everything in our lives and the lives of others around us. It may begin with 1 or 2 people in this church. It may be this church that changes this city, and this city may change everything else in our state, and so forth and so on, Father. I know of one man, his name was Billy Graham, who as a boy accepted you as Lord and Savior, and it changed the direction of so many lives. Father, let us dare to live this adventurous life of faith, Father. Give us the courage that we need, like you gave Joshua. Give us that sense of choice, that moment, Father, that you gave Jonathan. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Jesus hung on a cross, and heaven shouted, "Here's love." Jesus rose from the grave, lives today in my life, lives today in some of your lives. I don't know that. You know if He lives in your life or not. But the greatest choice you could make is allowing Jesus to come in and change your life. And if you've been a Christian for 30 years, maybe you've been saved for 30 years, but you only lived for Him 15 times. If you know what I'm trying to say. 2 years of experience, 15 times. It's time to move beyond the mundane. It's time to make a decision and grab that moment. And we're going to sing a song called "Here's Love." Corey's going to be at the front, and he's going to receive you. If you have a question or a prayer, if you need to come to the altar, you can do that. I challenge you to do that. Let's all stand. If you can stand, just stand and sing along with us. "Here is love." And you come right now.